Another bite-sized marketing session with me, Miles, from Miles Marketing. And this week's topic is, have you segmented your database? We're just going to look at some of the details really around segmentation of your database and maybe what you should be up to. Give you some hints and tips in terms of some of the fields perhaps that you should be putting into your database. I'm just going to check that we are indeed live on air. Sorry for that. Get myself all set up. Yes, it says that we are. So if you do have any questions at all, please pop them in the chat and I will do my very best to answer them live on air. Right, let's get started. Have you segmented your database? I suppose the first question is, have you got a database? You'd be surprised. You'd be surprised. So that's the first place to start. Start collating and building your database. For some businesses, right, a lot of the value is within the database that they hold. So again, when we talk about these things, we're being very generic really about this, and obviously certain specifics will apply to different businesses at different times, right? So the first thing I've got to say about databases is data protection. All right, GDPR here in the UK. Don't ignore it. Don't be ignorant about it. In terms of penalties for misusing data, if you have a serious violation and you're a large enough company, you could get fined up to 20 million euros or up to 4% of your total annual turnover for the year before. Even for a minor infraction, you could be liable to a 10 million euro fine and up to 2% of your company turnover for the previous year. Now, a lot of that is going to apply to large companies, but still, as smaller companies, please do not take people's data lightly. You'll need to appoint a data officer for your company, and you'll need to work this into your T's and C's and your policies, right? So, using a reputable CRM system, we've spoken about CRMs before, customer relationship management system, or a fancy word for a swanky database. They're generally held online. All right, you log into them. So all of that data is kept securely by HubSpot or Salesforce or whoever the CRM company is, right? So that is one of the GDPR big ticks there, that it's not being held locally on your system, right? It's being held secure. So if you're not familiar with the Data Protection Act, get yourself up on it, because if you're handling personal data, right, then you need to be on top of it. Now, there is a difference between personal data and business data. So look into that. However, it is suggested that if you are dealing with a piece of business data that is owned by one person, that could be classified as personal data as well. So just be very, very careful and make sure that you're up on GDPR. There we go. There's the there's the technical bit out of the way. Right. Rule number one when it comes to building your database is it's only going to be as good as the information that you're putting into it. And once you start, I'm not saying it's impossible, right? But once you start your database, the big tip here is to put in the parameters, right, from the start. Even if you don't have all of that information at hand, make sure that you set the system up to allow it to be able to capture that, because going back on it does become a little bit faffy identifying those, because you can only really search for things that you have identified, right? So when you set up your database, make sure that you set up the segmentation nicely from the start. I would say it's better to have too many points of data that you want to capture rather than too few, because you don't have to use them all, right? Ultimately, when it comes to segmenting your database, you're only going to be able to segment it by the fields that you have within your data set. Does that make sense? So if you wanted to search or segment by area, obviously you're going to need to have address fields or postcode fields, right? Zip codes if you're American, right? If you want to segment by industry, you'll have needed to say to add in an industry field, right? It can't just like work it out for you. So this is why I think this conversation is important, right? Because a lot of us don't think about this when we're building our CRM systems. It's a lot of the time it's an afterthought. I'm keeping my eye on the chat as usual. Get those questions in. You know the drill. So depending on the business that you are, that'll depend on the fields that you need to put into your system. Now, I'm not going to like just give you a list of all of the boring fields like name, address, the company name, the contacts. Those things, right, should be quite standard. What I'm going to do now is go through a more detailed list for you of areas that you may not have thought about in terms of being able to segment. All right. Now, the big question of this is, have you segmented your database? Well, the likelihood is you probably haven't well enough. And these may be some nice little areas that you want to think about in terms of being able to target people, because that's what it's all about. And we'll talk about how you do that in terms of a funnel in a second. So contact type. Easy for me to say. So think about flagging your entries as to whether or not they're a customer, or whether they're a prospect, or whether they're a partner, or whether they're an employee, or whether they're a supplier, a vendor. You get what I say? So what's important here, I suppose, is thinking about your communication, and that not all communication is just about getting more business from customers. When you think about communication with your staff and your suppliers, this can also be important. So I'm working with a company at the moment that's changed the way that they are distributed within their marketplace. So it's very important that we don't just talk to, their end customers, but we also inform the industry that they're in about the fact that they have moved away from the model that they were renowned for, right? So don't just think that your database and the segmenting of it is just about getting leads. It can be about talking to your staff, your suppliers, etc., etc. And you might sort of break things down in terms of contractors that you use or third parties, so on and so forth, right? So get those fields done. The contact type. Think about the lead source, right? So, the old sort of sales message of keep selling your best sellers, keep looking for business in the place where you've got the most business. But unless you keep a track of that, it's going to be quite hard to know. We've all got a decent memory, right? Well, some of us have got better memories than others, but don't rely on your memory to rely on where the business or the lead came from. So have a source field for you to fill in. All right. Where did it come from? Did it come from pay-per-click advertising you were doing? Did they find you organically? Was it a person? And if it was a person, how do you know that person? Was it part of a networking group? Do you have to share some commission with them? All of these type of things. Okay. So the lead source, where you got your lead from, have a little field there. You might want to think about putting in a lead status. So you track the status of the life of the lead. So, is it a hot one? Have they said that they want to work with you? Do you need to sort of push that through? Are they in progress? Are they cold? Are they unqualified? So on and so forth. So the lead status. What about the life cycle stage of the lead? Because, we get lots of leads that come through, and it's important to keep a track of whether or not they've become a customer, whether they are a subscriber. This is not to sort of look at your database and go, oh, I've got, 10 people that are subscribers, and I've got 10 that are different types of customers and 10 that are lapsed customers. It's important to be able to filter these so that you can target them with relevant information. Some people may come for you for a product or service that is annual, let's say, right? So, you only deal with them once a year. Well, have that segmented within there so that not only you can remind yourself to speak to them annually, but keep them up to speed on what you're doing in between. Don't just let people sort of fester year to year to year. I mean, you might still get business from them, but what about keeping them up to speed with all of your other products and services? Maybe they can recommend more people to come and join your merry band. Okay, so segment by life cycle stage. Think about adding in there some details about the organization. So the industry that they're in, or the region, or anything which will allow you to perhaps segment by product. Maybe you offer different products to different services or industries or job types or types of people. It doesn't really sort of matter. Whatever it is, think about breaking down the organization, the main header for your contact in terms of where they reside. Think about putting in the size of the company, right? And you can do this either by physical turnover or the amount of staff that they have. Now, like, why is it useful to know how many staff they've got? Well, that may have some implication in terms of products or services that you share with them, right? So the more detail that you can add to your database, the better. You never know when that detail will come in handy. Maybe if you did a filter of the types of companies, you can filter by more than one thing, right? You can filter by current subscribers and size of company. And what you may well find is that the majority of your customers have between 10 and 15 employees. So that gives you a really good sort of stay. Or it may say that that those customers, they all turn over £1 million, right? So all of a sudden you're getting a data set where you've got £1 million turnover customers, 10 to 15 staff. Well, that gives you more data to be able to analyze and go after more of the same types of customers. Okay. Think about sort of estimating the opportunity that's available. So once you put a new lead into your system, maybe you want to have a guesstimate as to the size of the opportunity. So maybe in my own business, maybe I will engage I put a lead into my system that I think may become a monthly customer. So their sort of lifetime of maybe staying with me for a year or so will be quite a significant amount of money in terms of revenue for me. Or they may be a bite-sized customer who's just coming to me for a one-off piece of marketing advice where their value will be a lot lower. So again, I can start to sort of not only filter my database based on, say, revenue opportunities, but then I know where to focus my time, right? Because maybe I want to spend more time focusing on larger customers, or maybe I'll have enough large customers and I want to focus on smaller customers, vice versa. But if I don't have that data set within my database, I won't be able to search it. Coming to the end now. So, Right, contact details. This may sound like an obvious one, putting contact details in, but I'm talking about the minutia of the contact details. So knowing that the employee there, Nick, right? Nick is into long distance cycling. Well, and he's got two boys that play rugby. You may not think that that's important or that's an important filter, but I'm telling you that it very much is, in terms of, when it comes to Christmas time and you're thinking about a relevant gift for Nick, and maybe you'll buy him something that's bike associated, or maybe you've got tickets to the rugby and maybe you invite him along with his sons, right? Think about adding a line in there to be able to add some minutia to some of the staff that are involved and some of the sort of the different types of contact information. So what sort of football team they follow, their likes, their dislikes. It will come in handy, I can assure you. This also helps if you're, say, thinking, on a larger sort of scale. Let's say that you wanted to hire a box at the races or at the football. This will allow you to query your database for those that are interested in football or interested in horse racing. All right, getting like-minded people together. It's also good for, personalizing. I'm not going to say birthday cards, right? But certainly sort of Christmas cards or special events. Dear Tony and Jane, right? Tony's wife's name. This will go a long way in terms of building relationships and building trust. Just writing Dear Tony and family is not quite so personal. And the last one is more of a general point, right? And it's around I'm going to say it, niching down, right? Thinking about the small little things and adding those fields into your database will help you in the future. So we're going to talk about sort of chunking down the database in a second, but the finer the level of detail, the more you can follow or chase that lead through to potentially becoming a client. So think about buckets. Think about, first of all, broad buckets when you're targeting people. Let's say you've got an email campaign, right? Now, I would suggest that you don't go straight into a minutia email campaign, that you start it off with broad brushstrokes, right? So I don't know, maybe you do like B2B services and B2C services. So maybe you send out an email, one that is specific to B2B, one that's specific to B2C, as an example. But don't just think about email. Think like, we're obsessed with everything being digital. And I think partly because we're getting lazy, right? Partly because of budget, because it's not free to send emails, right? But, to send the odd email is reasonably low or no cost. And even through, say, a CRM or a MailChimp, an email specific piece of software, it's relatively low in comparison to sending something physically. But I'm here to say, you need to think about multiple touch points with your customer base, all right? Whether they be, prospects or whether they actually are live customers. Think about, and I'm going to say it, touching them regularly and often. I think I'm probably going to get slated for that in the chat. But the analogy I used the other day, because one of my clients said, we were talking about something specific, right? And he said to me, yeah, Miles, but how is this going to bring me business? And it was a very good point. And what you have to remember about marketing is it's very unlikely that one thing that you do will bring you that business. It's very much like trying to fill up a glass full of drips, okay? Think of each piece of marketing activity that you do as a drip. And eventually, right, your cup becomes full because each little drip all adds up. And that's really like the analogy that I want to use with marketing. You might send someone an email. Well, they might not be ready to buy. Not everybody is ready to buy when you send them an email, but it'll be another little drip in the cup. You might connect with them on social media, or they might see your social media post, another little drip in the cup. You might send them a postcard in the post, another drip in the cup. So that when they are ready to make that purchase decision, you're front and center. Okay. Now, you can build, when I'm talking about the generals of segmenting your database and chunking it down, that sort of B2C, B2B analogy, you then need to think about the funnel, right? So once you've done the sort of the main, let's take email, right? So you email your B2B customers with some information or a product offer. I would always suggest that you get a professional involved, right, when you're building your email campaign, because I'm going into extra detail here, but things like landing pages are so important. Tracking and analyzing how the email's been used. Has it been opened? If it has been opened, has anything been clicked? If it has been clicked, what's been clicked? Who's clicked what, right? And then what you want to think of is coming down from that, from the mass email that goes out to everybody, you then have some automations in place. So those that have opened it, they receive a follow-up email, perhaps on, as a reminder or whatever it may be. For those that clicked it, perhaps they receive something slightly different, which is about a little bit more information about whatever it is that they've clicked on. And maybe, think about like the landing pages that they go to. Don't send people just to your website page where there's a clutter. Make sure you send them to something which is specific in relation to what the email is there for. All of the time, you're trying to chomp down the sort of the big database of people that you've sent this to, and you're trying to refine it, and you're trying to end up talking to individuals about what they want, and hopefully get them to convert. My advice there: don't go too deep too quick. Right, I'm just going to have a look at the chat, because I can see. I say I can see without my glasses and without it up close, I can't really see. But before I go into my top 3 tips, I'm just going to have a look at, relevance of the minutiae is critical. It enables like-minded thoughts and connections, from Karen, and also good to put in not so happy things to put in. Okay. Yeah. So right. Okay. So I've just sort of read this quickly, and then I've read it again. So Karen's saying here that it's good to put the not so happy things in, so you don't put your foot in your mouth. So, like maybe if a partner's died recently, right? Or if so-and-so has had a big illness, or whatever it may be, right? The more information that you can pop into your database, and this is Karen's point, right? The better in terms of building relationships with people. Ultimately, the CRM system is called a customer relationship management system, right? It's there to help you keep a relationship, all right, with your customers. So the more fields you put in, the better. Right. Thank you, Karen, for your comment as usual. Top 3 tips when it comes to have you segmented your database. The first one is start off with too many fields, all right? From the get-go, align yourself, too many fields, fill in them as much as you can, but try and give it a little bit of thought and structure in terms of what you think you will want to drill down on later down the line. Tip number 2, target broad segments of your database first. So cast the big sort of fishing net out there wide. And then through automation, start to become more specific. And that automation can obviously can send an email, but you can have manual automations in there to perhaps trigger a phone call or a site visit or something through the post to activate people. All right. So not all automations, if you like, are automated. Digital is what I wanted to say. And then number 3 is use a full sales funnel or a full leads funnel to hit your target, and use your database as the engine to drive that. So think about the relationship and the connections on social media. Think about your emails. Think about your DMs. Think about your phone calls. Keep a track of pretty much everything you do if you can. I know this is hard when you run your own business, but just try if you can, especially when you get a little bit larger and you've got people there to help you, maybe a good bit of delegation to the management of your database, and then the utilization of it and the analysis of it, which will enable you to be a lot more targeted when it comes to knowing your customers and your potential leads. So the more contact fields that you have, the better, and the more specific you are, you'll be able to tailor your message to your contacts, and the recipient, if you like, is going to feel a little bit more personal. The message is more personal to them in terms of what it is that they want and need. Okay, well, there we go. Another 26 minutes of bite-sized marketing goodness for you. I hope this has stimulated a little bit of thought into maybe thinking about sitting down and putting some time against some segmentation within your database. But what I'm going to say is, it's no good doing it if you're not going to do anything with it. All right. So even if it's just a little bit of segmentation that you do to allow you to structure the main message of an email that you might send out every month, then that's going to be a good start, because you might get to see a little bit more traction from them. So there we go. Thank you very much indeed. Next week we've got some LinkedIn tips, I think. I'm not gonna say what they are right now, but tune in next Tuesday at 12:30 live to find out what I'm going to be rambling on about. Thank you indeed very much for watching. I don't think there are any more messages in the chat, but as usual, if you're watching this on catch up and you do have a question, you can pop it in the chat, or you can WhatsApp me and ask me direct. I'm always around well, not always around, but I'm always happy to speak to you directly. But until next time, ta-ta for now.